and raised in the Southwest. And he attended attended Arizona State University. He was drafted in to serve into Vietnam and came home after returning from combat duty. He continued his studies and at the Institute of Fine Art in Santa Barbara, where he studied. Geez, can I say hello? Where he studied under master painter Ray Strong. There he met his wife, who is also, from what I understand, an artist, and he is also a member of the American Watercolor Society. He was elected to the Knickerbocker Artists of in New York, and he received the Past President's Medal from the Watercolor Society for his contributions to watercolor painting. And in 2014, he was awarded the title of Luminary by the Arts Council of Monterey County, California. Will has been a member of the Carmel Art Association since 1980 and currently serves as president. Will serves on the board of directors for the Carmel Valley Art Association. Please join with me and welcome Will Bullas. Take it away, Will.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank Bobby and Desiree, certainly, and Teresa Russell, or excuse me, Deborah Russell for helping to lay the breadcrumbs, and definitely Shelley and John Aliotti for throwing my name in the hat. Shelley, I can see you. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you, John. Okay, this is only one of the few that I have done in the past year, and it's interesting. As I was telling Bobby and Desiree, it hasn't become second nature yet. Still getting. I'm known for my bells and whistles, and the more bells and whistles, the better. It distracts from my artwork if you don't get it. But at any rate, I have put together a PowerPoint presentation that has a complete demonstration in it, that the look at the tools I use and so on. This is my studio. Almost turned around and fell over a chair. It's basically our home. Both Claudia is definitely an artist too, so she works here too. We have converted everything because we have been doing this from the very beginning. We met 50 years ago in art school, and for some reason or other, she latched on to me, and here we are today, this many years later. And we both create together, not at the same time. Claudia does a lot of tactile things. She does a lot of felting and women's purses and things like that, or men's purses. I know a few of those. She has been my critic and so on, but she doesn't. She also is my photographer. If I'm going to do something that's going to be a figurative piece and I want to pose myself, she does the photography and helps me work out some of the compositions and things. And that's one of the reasons I married that brilliant lady a long time ago. At any rate, she's in the office now, pounding away on my website. She takes care of almost all that technical stuff. So if at any time you lose sight of me, just give me a couple seconds and I'll reconfigure things, because it's happened before, but hopefully not now. Out here in Carmel Valley, every once in a while we get a little tweak. So I'm going to go ahead and begin my PowerPoint presentation here. Okay. Let me just give me a second here and I'll bring that back up. It should be just a second. Okay, and there we go. Okay, let me get the other little thing, get some of these. First of all, I want to thank the Central Coast Art Association for letting me do this, okay, and to show everybody. It's a little bit kind of a strain on artists these days, and I've talked with a couple of my friends too, that they feel that the posture that we're in all has kind of taken away our showing off and all artists are show-offs inherently, I think, because we do a painting and, you know, I run it, show my wife, I show my son who lives across the meadow, I kind of hold it up and show it to him. I show my artwork to the cats and to the birds, but it's not the same reaction as my fellow artists. Let's go ahead and move on here. Desiree, is everything coming through okay? Okay, let me make sure that I haven't let something go here.
Desiree, you were muted.
Oh, okay. Okay, but
I'm
Bobby,
here.
you can
There we
hear me.
go. Yeah, everything looks good, Will.
Okay, and as long as you can hear me, okay. Okay, like I said, thanks to the Central Coast Art Association and everybody affiliated there. I gave a demonstration. Oh God, must have been that Deborah lined up for me, maybe got almost 10 years ago. Anyway, let's move on in. Okay, this is I entitled this specific PowerPoint just add water. Okay, now we're going to go through a bunch of images. If you want to ask a question, Desiree and Bobby will take care of the questions and so on. And if there's something I go over a little too fast, don't hesitate to email me and get some answers here. Okay, now how does it all begin? Okay, I'm always thinking, I'm always getting ideas. I carry journals with me all over the place. And again, my studio, I used, my father was an aircraft mechanic, and he used to have a very big, and I was very jealous of it, a very big tool chest that he carried all his tools in. Well, I kind of duplicated that, and that's my main go-to piece of furniture. It's that big black thing in the center. It holds absolutely everything I could possibly need. Okay, I start out with a concept, an idea, and there are two types of concepts that I work with. And one is self-inflicted. Those are my own ideas and inspiration. And the other one is a structured one. And I'll go through and let you know what these mean. Okay, everything that I do starts out usually with a quick little scribbled thumbnail. It could be anything, just a really quick little thing, kind of gives me an instantaneous idea of where I wanted the composition to be and so on. This one in particular is when I met with a couple of gentlemen from the Rotary Club of Pacific Grove, which I'm an honorary member. I've been doing artwork for them and their fundraisers for about 10 years now. They had an idea. They part of the Auto Week, which has kind of been on hold now. They have consistently gone through and done put together fundraisers and involving automobiles during that Auto Week, and they've asked me to do something around that. I am not an automobile painter, I'm an artist, okay, and which means you can pretty much paint anything if you have the right scrap. Okay, so what is scrap? Okay, now we're going to scrap. I had to look for, because the last year that I did this, which was 2 years ago, was the excuse me, the Cobra. Okay, I did not know what a Cobra was, and they had to tell me what it was. I met a gentleman at one of the car shows from the previous year who had one, so I contacted him and asked him if I could take some photographs. So I went over to his place and we took some photographs of this absolutely gorgeous car. And I needed some background scrap because this is annually the fundraiser is held in Pacific Grove. And so I got some background stuff and some trees. I felt it needed that. I went to the internet, found the Cobra logo for this, and I said, okay, great. So I did a couple sketches and put together some drawings that I was going to use for my final painting and assemble that. And I figured with a Cobra, what would be likely to be the driver? And I thought, hey, a mongoose, that would be a great idea. Little did I know, at the same time that the Cobra automobile was being developed in Europe, or in England, I believe, another company who was making an automobile called the Mongoose was also developing theirs. So that idea was immediately nixed. So I had to go back to a Cobra. So I figured, who's going to drive this car? So I went to the internet and I found this gorgeous hooded Cobra. So I had to adapt this Cobra so he was going to fit, bend, and wrap himself around this automobile. So I placed him in the automobile with my background from Pacific Grove, and then slowly developed a painting. Once I got the paint.
Will, excuse me for a second for interrupting.
Go ahead.
I've made you the host, and I hope that you're able to hit share screen because we're not seeing your PowerPoint right now.
Oh, okay. All right. Let me do just that.
and see if that helps. And then we're recording. So right now, everybody, technical things, we're all learning as we go.
Okay.
And I thank you all for hanging in there with us.
Okay. Okay, just a second and I will get this back up. Okay.
Are you on two different devices or on one device now?
No, just one device.
Okay.
Okay, let me diminish this and see if I can get back on to. Okay, just a moment and I'll redo this and see if I can get this back on. All right, let me try this. Okay, let's go back to share screen now and okay. Okay, almost there. Okay. Got anything now, Bobby?
Yes, I see. Please stand by.
Okay, all right. Okay, let me get rid of that, hide the video panel, that's that. And then the other one is hide my floating meeting thing. Okay, looks like someone named Henrietta has chimed in.
Oh, you're gonna have to let her in. Sorry, since
I think I did.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. We'll get this one of these days. I hope everybody brought a lunch.
I
Okay.
thought you were treating.
Yeah, indeed. Okay, let's get moving here. Okay, here we go. Let's move along here. Okay. Again, like I said, this is just Add Water is the name of my presentation. We'll go through and we'll see the demo and so on. How does it all begin? Okay, in my studio and so on. Okay, then we go to a concept. Okay, I usually get a concept. I work from two types of concepts. People, I'm sorry you had to sit through this bilge water again. But the first type is self-inflicted. That's where I get personal inspiration. I make a quick note of something that's going to be a future painting for me. And the other one is a structured concept. Bobby, can you see this?
Yes.
We can see that.
Okay, good. Okay. Just have to check. It's like checking my pulse every few minutes to make sure I'm still here. Okay, the structured concept. Usually, now this everything that I do starts with a thumbnail. Now, this is a small, quick thumbnail that I made when I was at a meeting at the Rotary Club in Pacific Grove. They every week or every year they had during Car Week, they've been sponsoring a car for a fundraiser, and I've been doing the artwork for them for about 10 years. Well, the car they were going to do 2 years ago was the Cobra, so I needed some scrap about a Cobra. I'm not a car guy. I should have asked my friend John. He's a car guy. But so I had to get some scraps. So I ran into a gentleman at one of the car shows, and he has owned a Cobra. I asked him if I could take some photos. So I went over to his house and we took some photos of this absolutely gorgeous car. So I did, and I needed some background material, some background scrap. And I wanted those wonderful cypresses of Pacific Grove. I wanted some of that. So I went through my slides and so on. And let's see here. I got 2 people in the waiting room. Let's see if we can get them in here. Okay, admit and admit. Okay, I may intermittently do this just so I can get people in here. Okay. Okay, and let's see. Let's go on with this next picture. Hopefully this won't be in it. Okay, so I got some cypress trees from the background. Let me continue here. What is this? I think my camera's okay. Yeah, you knew it was going to be one of these days. Okay, and I went to the internet and I got the Cobra logo, and just too many things going on here at once. So let's go ahead and hide that floating meeting controls. Okay, so I went to the internet and I got a Cobra logo because I wanted to use that in the background of the painting somewhere. So I took the drawing of the Cobra, combined it with, and as I said earlier, I was going to use a mongoose as the driver, but there was another company competing against Cobra, and that was also they're a manufacturer was called a mongoose. So they got rid of that idea. Went back to using a Cobra for the driver, kind of fitted him into the Cobra, the automobile with the background. This is a basic sketch that I transferred to a canvas then. Okay, and so I did this part. I got the okie dokie from the Rotary Club of Pacific Grove, and they said, go ahead and continue. So then I added the logo and all the specifics at the bottom. And that's pretty much the same procedure I use for paintings, almost all my paintings. The year before that, I did a Jaguar for them, and I had two Jaguars, a black one and a regular one as the drivers. And then the year before that, I did a BMW, and they wanted two German dogs in it, so I had a Schnauzer and a Alsatian in there plus the butterflies. Now the second one, second concept that I use when I'm working is the self-inflicted one, and that is my favorite because that's head to toe, nothing but me. I've always been fascinated with literature, and especially Robert Louis Stevenson and Treasure Island. And I've always enjoyed all the movies and iterations of that. So I was working on this character of Old Blind Pew. So I did some posing and so on. I have a lot of costumes and hats and things. And my wife took a lot of pictures, and we did some posing with some backdrops. So I did my own version of Old Blind Pew. And this was a piece that's now in Los Angeles with the National Watercolor Society. Okay, this was a piece, it's a costume that Claudia helped me put together a number of years ago. I like historical characters because mostly when I paint them, they can't fight back or tell me how inaccurate the portrait is. And this is one of the paintings that evolved out of that, Engine Trouble. I like paintings that have a narrative to them. I love abstract works and so on, but I love artworks that are more illustrative and narrative and have a story to them. And Engine Trouble seemed to work with that one. Hopefully in all the years that this thing has been created, I did this painting duct tape about, probably almost 30 years ago. And I was so pleased when I got done with it, and I took it in and I showed it to my wife, and she goes, oh my God. And I said, what's the matter, honey? She says, what's going to happen when you pull the duct tape off? And I went, oh, okay. So I went back into the studio. My wife thinks on another plane. So I went back into the studio and created Duct Tape Unbound. I'm imagining laughter there because I think this is very funny. Tools of my art. What are the tools that I use to get here? Okay, of course, a whole variety of brushes, watercolor brushes and big cheapy fan brushes and so on. And my favorite tools, toothbrushes. Okay, I have a couple friends who are in the dentistry business, and every year they give me a whole package of different brushes, soft ones and firm ones and so on. And I've learned to use each of them, and pretty much each of them have been assigned to a specific color. And I'll show you how I go about using that as a tool. And this is a special splattering. It's not done with the thumb. A lot of people think that I splattered with the thumb like I'm holding a baseball bat, but no, it's done with a forefinger. And this gives me kind of a, I think in watercolor, they always have referred to things as happy accidents. Well, this has a lot of those happy accidents, but it's not as controlled as, say, an airbrush, okay? And I appreciate airbrush. One of my dear friends, Lucas Block, paints strictly in just airbrush and has for a long time. I use a lot of templates, and these templates are old pieces of mat board that I've cut certain shapes out of that seem like it's going to work in a painting when I'm getting to a shadow or a darkening area, an accent on a figure, and you'll see that as we move along. One of my favorite tools and mediums is a masking medium, and in the old days, I would go to Winsor Newton or Grumbacher and get their little jar of mascoid or misket or whatever they called it, and it was very expensive. It was $8 or $9 for a little quarter ounce. Well, a friend of mine told me about a masking or a liquid latex, because I knew this was a latex base. So a company called Douglas and Sturgis out of San Francisco sells quarts of this wonderful latex for about $8 or $9 a quart, and they ship anywhere. So I usually get a couple gallons of this, and I use it, and I put it in little sealed jars, and I use it, and I'll show you how that works too. I use an incredible array of sponges, photographic sponges that are super fine pour, some bigger cellulose sponges and so on. And it's a whole variety of this that I've been using for forever, 30 years at minimum. Okay, and these sponges have great textures to them. They give great accents to brick walls and so on. Okay, and there's a lot of stippling done and layer over layer. And working with a hair dryer, I can stipple down and get this great texture, dry it with a hair dryer, and then very quickly put another color over the top of it and get some amazing colors. And this is pretty much going to give you a how to do it A to Z. Okay. I start off with a Crescent 100 illustration board, and I love this board. I've been working on it for at least 30 years. It's a very heavyweight board, and it has a nice tooth on the other side, and it's the Crescent 100 illustration board. I staple it to the top of my watercolor board all the way around because it doesn't tend to warp or anything because it is watercolor, and a lot of times even elephant watercolor paper begins to warp and buckle on you. So using a staple gun, stapling all the way around the edges, and then I will mark off an area that I call the false mat. Okay, and you'll see what I mean by that. So, and this one happens to be 3 inches all the way around. And then I take, and once my drawing has been put down, I will take masking tape, just an ordinary cheap masking tape, and I tear it in half lengthwise. Then that tape is then placed end to end all around the area I've designated as my false mat. And you can see the drawing in the center there. Well, all around the edges, end to end, I'm laying this masking tape torn in half. And you'll see, because when it's all done, it produces this incredible decal edge. And for many years, when I first started painting and working in this technique, and I just tried it one day and I liked the effect, and I have been using it ever since. A lot of people, when they are introduced to my work at the very beginning, think it looks like a print. Okay, so I had to educate people along the way. So once I get the masking tape torn in half lengthwise, all the way around that area that I call the false mat, then I start blocking it off with more masking tape, sealing the edges off all the way around the edge, because I like that nice clean edge so I can determine what kind of mat I'm going to put on it and so on. Then I go in with some of my very large brushes and I start wetting the area. Now, what I've done is around my drawing, I have painted liquid latex as a frisket medium to keep the watercolor away from that area. And just the two central figures are going to be worked on now. Now I go to my very large palette and I take my toothbrushes, one of my special toothbrushes. Let me go ahead and let this person in. Okay. There we go. Let's go admit there and admit there. Sorry, just letting some of your friends in, our friends in. Okay, I think this last batch of people in, I think, hopefully. All right, let's see. We'll get better at this as time goes on. Probably not today, but as time goes on. Okay, back to my palette. Now I'll be scrubbing the area. I've dipped the toothbrush in a little bit of water, and so I can loosen some of the pigment here. Then I'll scrub it around on my palette there, and I'm picking up this one kind of pink color. Okay. Let me see. All right. Okay, I've kind of gone dead here for a second. Let me see if I can get this moving. Okay, feel bare. There we go. Okay, now here's a close-up. Scrubbing on my palette. Here comes Marley. Let me get her admitted. Okay. Okay, just one more. It seems to take a couple seconds. Once we get somebody admitted, it takes a second to get back in here. Okay, just a minute. We'll get moving here. Just a minute. Well, at this rate, it's going to be a long day. Okay. And then I take the pigment that I have on the wet paint toothbrush and I start splattering in this area that I've already wetted down. Now, these little flecks of paint are slowly going to merge and spread out. Then maybe I'll smooth them a little bit with a larger brush. And it's just a way for me to regulate and control the amount of pigment I'm going to put on the particular subject matter I'm working on. Okay, now once that is dry, and I dry it with a hair dryer, and you can see the outer edge here that the pigment has not stuck to it because it has been sealed off with the masking tape. Now, what I'm doing now is I'm taking a wet brush and going back in on the dry surface here and scrubbing it with a little bit of water. Then I will lift it out. And as I lift it out, it'll lift pigment out and start to build up highlights in an area. And then I can build up highlights, and then I'll use my templates and come back and use toothbrush with a darker color and work on some shading. And I'll pick an area on one of my old templates. This particular template, I bet I've had 25 years, but it has a little bunch of little curves in it, and they each seem to fit something in the painting that I would be able to use later. So I use those templates to splatter in some areas and start to build up some shadows and highlights and so on. This is mostly toothbrush work at this stage, a little bit of paintbrush work, doing the little berets on there, touching up the eyes and so on. And then once that is dry, and I spray it with a matte fixative, and I like to use Krylon's 1113 matte spray fixative. It really sets the paint and makes it waterproof at this point. And then I can peel off that liquid latex that I was using as a frisket early on. And it peels off just like a rubber glove. It's really a neat product, and it's fairly inexpensive compared to the more commercial expensive friskets. Okay, now once that's been taken off, now I told you I sprayed the two figures here, the two piggies. I sprayed those with a matte fixative, that Krylon product that I use. And so now it's fully waterproof, and I can paint liquid latex over the top of these characters. And I'll show you why. So I'll paint those all the way around with the latex, and the latex then will dry to it almost totally clear. You can see it's built up on there. It has a little slight yellow tinge to it, but that won't hurt or do anything to the painting. That will come off later. Working on the background later, because these two little pigs are French. I wanted them to be French. You'll find out in a minute why. So I put a Toulouse-Lautrec poster in the background. Seal things off and start because the latex is sealing off the two little piglets, okay, from the background. I can now smear with water and start working on the background. After doing the background, then I can work on the sidewalk that they're standing on, again with my toothbrushes, splattering and spraying and using a variety of colors, one over the top of the other, working quickly with a hairdryer so the first layer has dried while I splatter some more. Once that area is done and dried and I'm satisfied with it, I'll spray that again with the matte fixative, and then start peeling things off little by little, and then drying with a hairdryer, doing touching up little pieces here and there. And here's the painting finally finished, and I titled it Wee Wee. Uproarious laughter and applause and people throwing hats in the air and so on. Thank you. Okay, just add water. It's that easy. But I have to tell you some of the awards that I've won, and mostly because you're going to see some images, okay, that you probably have not seen in the past, because I'm known mostly for the humorous things that I do, and I'm glad I took that route. But competitions worldwide require, almost demand that it be serious work. They don't like particularly piggies and duckies, and they really never have. Not that they dislike them, but the humor was never part of their thing. So I would do a lot of serious portraits. This pink stripe was one of the very first paintings accepted to the American Watercolor Society back in the day, when you had to get accepted to 3 shows within a 5-year period before you were even considered for membership. Well, I jumped through all those flaming hoops, and I finally made it. I had a couple pieces as the years went on, like this Women's Day and this particular piece called Fool's Time, that were both selected for the National Academy of Design in New York and showed at the Salmagundi Club a few years ago. Then this piece here, the Human Cannonball. I did this piece, and it's still hanging here in my studio, but I did this piece for the all media competition that was my first all virtual competition that I entered in by the Artist magazine, and it took first place, and I was so pleased with that, and it came with a hefty prize. Then a piece that went to the American Watercolor Society in New York a couple of years ago was called Paradise Lost and Found, and that was yours truly. Okay, I posed for this. Claudia took some pictures, and we worked out the composition and so on. And I drank half that bottle of scotch working on this painting. Then this piece went to the National Watercolor Society and took a top award in that a couple of years ago. Then this piece is called By Mir Bist du Schön. Okay, and it's from an old Yiddish song from the 20s or 30s in New York. It was a stage play, and I think my camera might be turning off. Oop. Okay, we got that back on. At any rate, this painting ended up in New York at the show. It's traveling around the United States right now. And you may wonder, see my name and the AWS, NWS, and KA behind the name or below my name. It's because I'm a signature member of the American Watercolor Society, the National Watercolor Society, and the Knickerbocker Artists of New York. Now, with that being said, here I am in my studio with that one painting before it went off to New York. This is the type of thing that I'm pretty much known for, is the humorous pieces, the little narratives and stories, the stripper. Okay, I do a lot of wildlife because it's safer than doing portraits of people that I know, because they usually come after me with a baseball bat because they're not happy. The significant otters. This was done for a friend for their anniversary, and they are both from Monterey, and that seemed to work out with the sea otters with the champagne. This was my very first commission poster that I did for the lodge at Pebble Beach in 1986, I believe. It was called The Foursome, and some of those old posters are still floating around. So, 83, that's when it was. I forgot when it was. Okay. Then for the 25th anniversary of the Monterey Wine Festival, I did the 7 Sommeliers. I've done their posters for a number of years. Jazz Bash by the Bay, celebrating I believe it's their 34th or 35th year. Last year they had to postpone it, or they just made it under the wire. I think they're going to come back with pretty much a virtual Jazz Bash here in Monterey. And I've designed their posters and artwork for the past 15, 16 years easily. And that's the poster I did for them. Then I was commissioned by the Monterey Bay Aquarium to do the sea otters. And goodness, that was probably, at least 25 years ago. If you stick around long enough, you get stuck with a job. This one was my first overseas commission, and it was for Kenya, and it was raising money to save the elephants. And so I wanted to do something that was not traditional of an elephant in the wildlife, but I did this E is for elegant, okay? And I like the fact that elegant rhymes with elephant and so on. But we raised some good money for those poor elephants. Here's another thumbnail. I did a real quick one in one of my journals. Okay, I always have a journal with me, so I make quick notes. This one was going to be called the Cadillac Bar and Grill. And here's the finished painting. And 2 of those cats are ours. Okay, the Great Whites. A friend of mine, Christine, she had this idea. So I quickly did a quick thumbnail of this, put together some items, and came up with the Great Whites. I love doing these kind of paintings because they've got a great little narrative. You're not sure which direction you're going to go. Is it going to be bad or whatever? Then Beethoven's 5th and 6th. Okay, and Baked Potato. A friend of mine has a gallery in Idaho, and he had gotten me this commission for a friend. And so I called this one Baked Potato, based on the fact that he's had a lot of martinis, and the martinis you could see by his droopy little eyeballs. Let's move on to Pink Floyd. Okay, I grew up with jazz and classical music and not necessarily rock and roll. And it was only a few years ago that I discovered rock and roll music and Pink Floyd. And one day when I was watching a documentary about them on television, I made a comment to my wife about, and I said Pink Floyd inadvertently. And she said, you said Pink Floyd. And I said, no, did I really? And so immediately I got an idea for a painting. Of course, pink champagne. Sigmund Freud was notorious for smoking his big cigars and so on. And I took all the clothes off of him, since most of his concepts and things involve, I guess, sex. And that was the closest I wanted to get to doing something sexy. And not really sexy, but it was kind of fun to do it. But it has a nice narrative to it. Okay, the 3 sheeps to the wind. There are so many phrases and slang terms in the English language, the American version of the English language. It has all these great things that immediately gives me images that I refer to right away. 3 sheeps to the wind was one of those images. And also you get all these great little bells and whistles to make things blow away. Hair of the Dog, this first painting I did a number of years ago. The gallery called me and said, we just sold your painting Hair of the Dog. And I said, great. And they said, we sold it to Paul McElhaney. And I said, well, who is Paul McElhaney? And they said, well, he owns Tabasco. Didn't think a whole lot of it. I knew who he was, knew what Tabasco sauce was. Then about a week later, I get a phone call, and this woman identifies herself as the secretary to Paul McElhaney. And I said, what can I do for you? And she said, Mr. McElhaney would like to talk with you. So I get on the phone. I said, yes, sir. What can I do for you? He says, would there be a problem if I return this painting to your studio? And I immediately, the hairs went up on the back of my neck. And I said, no, sir, that's no problem at all. But is there a reason for it? And he said, yes. Could you put in a small bottle of Tabasco sauce in the painting? And I said, absolutely. And then as a result of that conversation and adding that bottle of Tabasco sauce, over the next few years, I did 8 commissions for him. And they were all based on drinks, cocktail drinks that had Tabasco sauce in them. And there were quite a few. And it was a lot of fun. We built up a nice relationship. Then I did Yappy Hour a couple years ago. And that's been a popular one. Somebody asked me, why do you always do adult dogs? Why don't you do some puppies? So Yappy Hour was it. Then I do these silly things like Pond, James Pond. So far, I haven't gotten in trouble for using that background logo from the Bond films. How about the Tipsy Chicks? Then I did this painting called the Bipolar Club. I showed it to my wife, Claudia, and she said, you might not get a good reception on this one. And I said, what do you mean? She says, well, people with bipolar problems might take offense at it. As it turns out, it has been one of my most popular selling prints, okay, which goes to show you, as a perfect example, that even people who suffer from being bipolar get it at least half the time. I hope you're laughing because I worked hard on that joke. How about 3 wine mice? My friend Terry from Idaho commissioned me to do this. So I did this, but also at the same time, I couldn't resist putting the cat in the background. How about Dawn Patrol? This is a brand new painting that I just finished. I was watching the old black and white movie, I believe about 1932 or 33. It was called the Dawn Patrol. So I have all these. This is a flight helmet that I bought at Banana Republic when it was still in the not Del Monte Plaza, but the Carmel Plaza 1,000 years ago. And I still have that little flight helmet today. And I needed to be able to write it off. So I came up with working with it to do several paintings so I could actually use it as an IRS write-off. And then I do these funny little weird things too. When I'm about 8 cans into a 6-pack, I'll come up with an idea, make a quick sketch. This one is just called The Beast from Bunny Bog. And what it's meant to do is to just stimulate your imagination or wondering how drunk I am and what kind of wine I'm drinking. But I like to do these little things like that. They have a narrative, but you're not quite sure what it is. Not like something like this that's pretty spelled out, ostracized. So don't fool yourself. I'm not real bright on this thing. I had to run to the dictionary to find out exactly how to spell ostracized. And happily Klaus clutched his claret. I just like the sound of all those things together. This little guy, Klaus, has been a character in a bunch of my paintings for a number of years now, just because it works out as a small painting. Or reptile dysfunction. Kind of rhymes with something else, and I usually don't go over the border or over the line, that red line or that line in the sand. I insinuate, I imply, I infer, but I don't go over the line and get nasty. Winoceros, probably one of my very first popular paintings like this. I did the painting and a gentleman came into the gallery while I happened to be there, looked at the painting and said, I really like your Winoceros, but the title is really stupid. And I thought, oh, okay, I'll show you. And so since then, and that's been 40 years ago, I've been doing this. How about the wine rack? Kind of obvious, it seemed to me. This is a brand new piece that I just finished the other day. The Monkey's Gone Rogue. I think it was in reference to some of the news that was on last month. And this piece I did for some locals here on the Monterey Peninsula. I saw a show about how the whales were running in Monterey Bay. So I did this blue whale, made him kind of sad. He's on his 3rd martini already. Or the Wild Child. Now this one I did and was commissioned to do this by a group in Nevada that are called the Memorial Mustang Ranch. And that's not what you think, okay? They are the woman who owns the ranch and commissioned this painting actually does. I got to let Pamela in. Okay. Anyway, this painting, Wild Child, was commissioned by them because she actually rescues Mustangs, wild Mustangs. It's quite quite an interesting place, and they have buildings and outer buildings, almost like a campsite that they invite people to come in and spend the weekend and watch the rounding up of these wild Mustangs. She sent me lots of photos and footage and videos of it, and it's really quite amazing. Okay, we've got to wait just one more second until this computer catches up. Okay, just a second. Seems to want to do that every time I let somebody in. There we go. Putin on the Ritz. Definitely a timely painting. This is about as political as I get. I try not to go to that line. There are so many artists that are so much better at being political in their artwork, better than I am. But this one, I couldn't help but do it. In fact, I had to go to the market and pick up a box of Ritz to use it as a subject matter, because I wanted to see what color that red was and what exactly the design was on the front of it. I changed the spelling on it because it's not spelled with an S, it's spelled with a Z. But I did this, and the bad part about this whole thing was my wife and I ate that whole box of Ritz in about a day and a half. Bad to the bun. There's certain words in the English language that just latch onto a variety of things and phrases, like bad to the bun. How about a till of the bun? Again, just a funny reference to Till of the Hun and so on. And for no reason, I paint very quickly. I paint very fast. I'm very prolific. I have over 2,100 paintings in my digital library. Every time I finish something, it goes into, gets photographed, high resolution, then goes into our virtual catalog. Emperor of the Moon. This piece is now on exhibit in Los Angeles with the National Watercolor Society. Again, I saw this helmet on the internet, bought this helmet, hung little wine corks. It wasn't hard finding wine corks around my house, but found these or hung these wine corks to keep the bugs off and so on, and an old replica of a Sharps rifle, and just put these together. You can see all the little cogs around the outside of the moon, kind of a steampunk feel. Okay, I'm really enamored by that the steampunk concept. If you guys know anything about it, it's really fascinating. There's a couple of groups, bands of rock and roll that do some steampunk music. It's pretty neat. It's not crazy wild stuff for an old man, so but I enjoy it. This piece is on its way to New York. It was chosen for their 154th annual exhibition this year, and this watercolor is entitled Conspiracy. And yes, indeed, I did it at about 4 or 5 months ago, and it happened to, I guess I watched too much news. But anyway, I was very pleased with this painting, and it got chosen for the show. Now I have a section of artworks that are called See You in Church, like Holy Cats. And the piece Holy Cow. Some of them are incredibly obvious, and it's okay if you think they're stupid. I don't mind that too. Bird of Prey. Okay, I did this one about a year ago. Then 2 weeks ago, I came up with an idea for Birds of Prey, the plural of that. And I thought it came out kind of fun. The term birds is a British term describing women. It's probably derogatory, but that was not my intent. But this was entitled Birds of Prey. How about Holy Sheepship? Still not crossing that line into dirty language, but having some fun with what your imagination might take you. See You in Court. Kind of the same process, same ideas. Some of these things like legal eagle. Some of these terms that are just embedded in our language, our English, our American English, paralegals. Almost all of my legal stuff has been sold to attorneys or paralegals. Legal briefs. This was a commission done for a British barrister, I believe they're called. Court of Appeals, one of my favorite all-time legal paintings. And why? Because it's got a fabulous story to go with it. I did this painting, my note card publisher here in Carmel Valley, it has to be at least 15 years ago, published this as a note card. One day I got a phone call from Barbara, and she said, there's a piece of mail here with a curious return address. You might want to come pick it up. I was 2 minutes from her warehouse, so I went out and picked up the envelope and opened it up. And on the inside was a card saying, "Dear Mr. Bullas, I've recently celebrated a birthday, and a friend of mine sent me a birthday card with your image, Court of Appeals, on it. I've never laughed so hard and had such a good time. Sincerely yours, Jane Goodall." Honest, true story. So I rushed home and I showed my wife, and I took the card that she had sent me, Jane Goodall, and I tacked it up in my studio. So proud of this, and spread the story around to everybody I could find and would stand still for the story. Then exactly 1 year later, the phone rang in my studio, and I grabbed the phone and picked it up. Or I didn't pick it up. I listened to the machine. It was answering the machine. It was on a Sunday. I remember specifically. And I was paying bills out of a imaginary checking account. But at any rate, the answering machine said, "Hello, Mr. Bullas. This message is for you. This is Jane Goodall." And I went, "Oh my God." I dove for the phone, grabbed the phone, and I said, "Dr. Goodall, Dr. Goodall, this is Will Bullas. What can I do for you?" She says, "Well, let's start off with calling me Jane." And no, I kid you not, true story. And I said, "Okay, Jane, what can I do for you?" She said, "Well, I'm here in the United States. I'm on the Potomac River celebrating a birthday once again. And I'm on some friends bought me a great birthday luncheon, and we're sitting on the Potomac River, in the middle of the Potomac River, on a beautiful yacht. And I'm looking up at the captain, and he's wearing a duct tape t-shirt. And I knew I had to call you." So she's calling me from his phone. And she's told me, she said, "I'm going to be in San Francisco at the Masonic Auditorium in a couple of weeks lecturing." She said, "Could you meet me there? I'd love to talk with you." And I said, "Absolutely." So 2 weeks later, Claudia and I were in San Francisco, and we went to we were escorted down to the green room and sat for over an hour talking with her. And all she wanted to know was about being an artist and how did I come about this in my career and so on. She didn't do any lecturing or anything, but just watching every movement. And I knew then and there that I couldn't tell a lie or elaborate too much, as I'm willing to do usually, because I knew she could tell I was exaggerating. And she said, "Will you two stay for my lecture?" And I said, "Absolutely, we're looking forward to it." She says, "Well, the only problem is they have lost my slides." And so she had boxes and boxes of slides for this lecture she was going, but she had lost it on the plane somewhere. So they took us down, and we sat front row seats, and without slides, she entertained for 90 minutes the most incredible story about her life in Africa among the primates and so on. It was just absolutely amazing and not bad. Okay, move back to some of my genre here. Okay, the Jailbirds. And do we cheat them and how? Okay, and somebody approached me and said, "I saw your painting, but you stole it from the Car Guys on NPR." And I said, "No, the Car Guys stole it from the Three Stooges, who did a routine about do we cheat them and how a number of years ago." And so I decided to do these three guys, do we cheat them and how? And you'll notice that one is a rat, one is a weasel, and the other is a skunk. And in fact, the skunk is holding, you can't see it, it was a rather large painting, but the skunk was holding a business card that says, "We specialize in out-of-court settlements." Seize the carp. I think you're probably all familiar with Carpe Diem, seize the day. Well, I did a 2-panel thing with this, and I did one on the left was called Seize the Carp, and then the other piece on the other side was called Today's Special Carp. But the busboy who was asked to write the Today's Special on the chalkboard misspelled it. Okay, water hazard. This is one of many golf paintings that I've done, living in some of the most beautiful golf country in the world. We know about this because we celebrate this every year with the AT&T. Long before that, it was the Crosby Pro-Am, and I'm not sure what the Neanderthals called it. But at any rate, I don't golf, okay? Never have, never really wanted to, but all my friends do. So we'd go out time and time again, and I would listen to some of the language going on, and I would come up with paintings. High tea. Kind of a good laugh, doesn't mean too much here. Out of the Woods. This was one of my first prints with the Greenwich Workshop out of New York. Originally, I told my wife I was going to title this one Driving Miss Daisy, and she said, "Don't you dare." The Sand Trap Pro, same kind of concept. Who do you want to get you out of the sand trap? But probably an ostrich who's been down there before. Then in Connecticut, a number of years ago, I did an innuendo show, as I call it. It had references to a variety of things, nothing nasty, nothing outside the lines and nothing of decency and so on. But I came up with a series of these things that were just a hoot. And I'm going to elaborate on those as time goes on, adding more to it. This was Lab Dance, one of those pieces. Between the Sheeps. See, now you can't imagine how this would look like going before the jurors at the American Watercolor Society in New York, all prim and proper, and then having to see these. How about this one? The tall one with big melons. And the Peep Show. Or how about Some Set of Buns? There's certain words that have changed and refer to other things. And it's always fun to play with those, and they're kind of hidden meanings. Now, this last little image here is one of my favorites because it always gets a good laugh. This is entitled Granny Gets a Goose. Just add water, and I'm standing by that. Just add water. One of my favorite sayings here, inspiration is the guest that does not willingly visit the lazy. And yes, that's by Peter Tchaikovsky. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate your attendance and so on. If you're interested in any prints, note cards, etc., please visit the Carmel Valley Art Association on Center Street, just behind where the old Wells Fargo used to be. Again, thank you. Okay. I think we're back here, are we? There we go. Okay, did that actually work?
Yes, it did.
Okay. I keep looking at little red microphones. Who was that? Desiree that said that?
Yes, it is. Well,
thank you, Shelley. I appreciate the applause. Okay, are there any questions?
I would like to invite anyone who might have questions right now. If you have a question for Will, you can unmute yourself and ask him. Okay, it's open for questions and answers.
I have a question. I was wondering, what is the size you usually work?
Over the years, I have fallen in love with squares. And so now I work in squares that are anywhere from 15 inches by 15 inches. And the largest I go is 30 by 30. And the reason for that is because hoping that, keeping my fingers crossed, that the painting would turn out halfway decent and I could use it in a competition. I was very much aware of what it was going to cost me to ship a larger painting to New York or Los Angeles. So I usually keep it under that size, but I have worked large, as big as 5 foot by 5 foot, but it's hard getting paper or illustration board that size. The largest illustration board I have ever gotten is made by Crescent, and it's a 100, but it's 40 by 60, which is pretty massive. In fact, John Madden owns one of my largest 40 by 60 paintings I did of elephants a number of years ago, and it's hanging in his home down on Scenic Avenue.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Amanda.
Yes. So you painted the mascoid, I guess, on the pigs, and then you painted all around them. When did you take that off so that you could start putting the hats on and so forth?
Well, actually, I sealed off the entire background, and just the pigs with the hats was left. Okay, so I did all the pigs with the scrubbing, splattering with the toothbrush, and then scrubbing and lifting out color, and then I went back in with a paintbrush and painted the hats on. Dried it with a hair dryer, then sprayed it with the matte spray, the finish, okay? And then when that was totally dry, then peeled all that background off and then covered the pigs, and then I could work on the background. It's just a matter of working back and forth. It's almost like a batik. Certain areas you can go into, and by using the spray, the fixative, okay, it really seals things so you don't contaminate anything, especially if you're working with a lighter color. I traditionally try to figure out which part of the painting is going to be the most difficult, and I'll attack that first, because if I can't handle the most difficult part of the painting, then forget it. The rest of the painting is going to be a wash anyway.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Anybody else?
Yeah, this is Richard. Hi.
Hi, Richard.
It's on paper. Is there any way to seal them so that they don't have to be framed with glass?
Uh, you know, there have been a number of sealants and things like that. I wouldn't recommend marine varnish or anything, but I've had a few people that want to do that. I have in the past, when I wanted to save something from being having to go under glass, I would really spray it heavily, let it dry for several days. Then I would go back with a large brush and I would give it a nice big acrylic wash over the top of it. Which would be probably a matte finish acrylic, but then immediately that would convert it into being an acrylic or a mixed media. And competitions like the National Watercolor Society and the American Watercolor Society are pretty strict about what the rules are. They're starting to relax them a little bit, but in the past, it's always been strictly transparent watercolor and no opaque watercolor involved in it. And then little by little, now they allow opaque watercolor and they allow acrylic. So things change over the years. But I can't recommend any specific product that works for that. I still do 99% of my work as watercolor under glass.
Thank you.
Any other questions here?
I have a question.
Go ahead, Irene.
I'm wondering, do you use a fine brush for your outlines? Do you use any pen pencil at all, or is it
Well,
all brush?
Well, actually, yes. Okay. If I'm doing bunny rabbits with a lot of whiskers or a cat with a lot of whiskers or a specific animal that needs a lot of hair around the edges of it, I will actually use what I love to is the DeWent watercolor pencils from Germany. They're a really heavy pigmented pencil that also is water soluble. And so they're great for working on things, putting on whiskers like that, because if the whisker doesn't come out the way you want it, you can wet it, moisten it, and then lift it right back out as you would watercolor.
Thank you.
We have a question in chat
Okay.
from Marley. What brands of watercolor paints do you use?
This is funny. I always get asked this question. So just for fun, I picked up a tube of my alizarin crimson by Winsor Newton, and I looked on the back of it, and it's Winsor Newton is located in England, but it said that the pigment was manufactured in France. So, but I've always worked in Winsor Newton. There was and I think it's still around, a company, and you didn't hear it from me, called Shiva. And they make some of the weakest pigments I've ever used. If the sepia in the Winsor Newton world is one of the most wonderful, intense browns that I use a lot for a lot of backgrounds. And Shiva has a color that is just like bad tap water. The pigment volume is terrible. Anything else? Well, it certainly has been my pleasure, and I look forward to doing this again in a year or so if you guys will have me back.
Thank you so much, Will. I appreciate you and all your, we have one more question. I think Tamara.
Okay.
Yes, thank you. When you put those whiskers on with the DeWent watercolor pencils, is that after you've sprayed it with the Krylon?
You can do both. It's nice to do it after you spray with the Krylon, because if you mess up with one of the whiskers, you can take it out without worrying about the background. But once that's finished and I'm satisfied with the whiskers with the DeWent pencils, then I will go back and spray over the top of that, trying to keep everything as permanent as possible. And of course, everything that I paint gets photographed or scanned high resolution and then goes into my archives. And I have over 2,200 images in archives now. And fortunately, technology has made a nice safe place to hide them, and it's in the cloud, so I can access them from anywhere with any device. And this is a great new advantage for artists, I think, because particularly in the world of licensing, where you're doing prints and note cards and things like that, you need high quality, high res images to go to those manufacturers like that. So we're at a really neat place, in this big magic window that I like to call it in the world of technology, when it refers to artists, especially two-dimensional artists.
And that was another question I had. What program do you use for storing and filing all your images?
I use all Adobe products. Adobe Photoshop, I'll go in and I'll scale it the right size. I'll scan it on a Epson scanner, usually at about 600 DPI, which is pretty high. And you'll find out that the images, any photographic images or of your paintings or anything, or really take a lot of space. So it's really great that there's the cloud that you can store them in. And I've been doing that for as long as the clouds have been available. So I recommend that. I recommend that even if you do a painting you're not particularly wild about, scan it and store it anyway. It's going to be important. One day you'll wish you had taken a shot of that and kept it in your archives.
Okay, thank you.
And Will, we have
pleasure.
another question by Barbara Gill. What was the number of the matte medium you used?
My camera's pooping out here, I think. Yep. Let me get my camera back on. Oops, sorry about that. I believe it's 11 or it's 1311, 1311, and it's Krylon matte spray. I tried gloss for a couple of years. It did not like it because I like that matte finish. Because when you have a gloss finish, as some of you may know, working with acrylics, you end up with a gloss finish under that glass. You get a double bounce. But I think it is 1311. Oh, in fact, I have a jar or a can right here. Memory serves right. 1311. And if you have any follow-up questions, don't hesitate to email me. Go to my website. My email is right there, and I'd be happy to talk with you about anything. I don't like secrets. I think artists should share information, and then you're on your own, and it's up to the individual imagination. And I think I've got a pretty good head start.
Well, we really appreciate your openness, Will. And please, everyone, in the chat box at the top, I put Will's contact information and his website. Thank you all for coming today.
Thank you, folks. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.